ask someone to condemn an individual they don't know anything about just on your word. If you said, "Will you condemn John Smith?" I'd be like, "Look, I don't know who the guy is."
Give me a little context on who John Smith is, and if you tell me John Smith did a Hitler salute and then he assaulted police officers, Tim, I don't have to know him personally to say that is an awful human being and he deserves everything he gets.
Yeah, no,
you won't say that.
But you.
Okay, I'm going to introduce y'all because I do a lot of Brian Shapiro debates. Brian Shapiro suffers with the worst terminal case of TDS I've ever seen, and he is a convicted pearl clutcher. Right? Every time anyone, if it's on the other side, he clutches his pearls like he's never heard anything so awful. But then when his side does it, he just ignores it and acts like he didn't see it. So that's all you need to know about Brian Shapiro so far.
Because you are still incorrect.
Every scenario is different.
I'm not going to just trust what you're saying is true and insult another person.
Look it up.
No, I understand that. My point is not on this specific individual. By all means, we can say, don't do these things. They're bad things to do. But I'm just saying in a debate to be like, here's one specific individual, here's another.
I'm not giving you one. I can give you plenty.
And I'm going to explain why these people needed to be pardoned. The first question that anyone needs to ask is, what is the amount of time an individual typically gets on a first offense for assaulting an officer?
Right.
Is it 3 years in solitary? Solitary is considered torture by many countries.
At my local police department, battery on a police officer would get you 3 nights in jail if you can't come up with $100 fine. I have been on calls where every person on the scene I had arrested for battery on a police officer at some point, and they're talking about putting people away for decades for it. That's how crazy this is. So as a police officer, yeah, I don't like seeing police officers getting hit, but it's kind of just part of the job. Like, it's not like a federal offense like they tried to make this into, where you just go away forever to solitaire. No, at our little local police department, you got to spend 3 nights in jail if you couldn't come up with $100 bond to get you out. And that went towards your fee, which was like another $100. It's not this big giant thing like Brian tries to make it into, like traumatic brain injury. Like, they would just hit cops. It was just like another person. But I don't know.
Depends if they have a record. It's a case by case basis. Right. It depends. Now, I can give you my personal opinion on what I think about assaulting police officers, whether it's Black Lives Matter or January 6th. I would say, in my personal opinion, if you assault a police officer, which is a horrific crime.
First offense at a protest.
I think it should be a minimum of 3 to 4 years in jail. If you assault a cop,
but this guy
very
did.
serious crime.
So this guy did serve that time. And so the issue with the...
Can you imagine what the overcrowding would be? Like, the little small town I worked in, most people in that town had been arrested for battery on a police officer at some point. So the entire town would just be incarcerated. Like, this is kind of silly. It's from people who didn't work in law enforcement and know nothing about it. And then, yeah, it does sound bad, battery on a police officer. But in reality, it's a misdemeanor in almost every jurisdiction.
The pardons is, there are people that probably should not have been pardoned. But the problem is that I have personally met individuals. I met a woman, her and her husband got 18 months in prison, in federal prison, for misdemeanors because around like 3 or 4 o'clock, I can't remember the exact time. This is after this all violence, nothing, everything's cleared out. People
not even supposed to be in jail that long for a misdemeanor. Misdemeanor in my state means under 6 months. That's the maximum you can get. If it was like the elevated charge, like you've been guilty of it 500 times, then you can do that maximum charge, and it's still, you can't go over 6 months. So I don't know how they had over a year long misdemeanor. Like, that's crazy.
People are already leaving. They were walking through through DC.
Yeah.
They come to the Capitol building where there are no barricades. They're on the other side where there's no violence.
Yeah.
They walked up the stairs where the doors are open, and they walked inside and asked people what was going on. And the police said, there's a protest.
I know what you're talking about. I know this story.
They then left. And then a year later, feds kicked their doors in front of their children and arrested them. And the judge refused to allow them to present evidence that was exculpatory.
So, Tim, that's wrong.
Indeed.
Hold on. The majority of those things were wrong.
Listen, I've been very consistent on my opinions on this.
Yeah,
I'll even take your circumstance. I believe that there's no question that there were people that were overcharged. There's no question that there were certain situations where it was politically motivated. And in those specific situations, completely agree with everybody in this room.
So here's the issue.
But I'm talking about the most violent criminals.
Yeah, and I agree. But again, did I not just say violence, that he deserved to get punished for his violence? Did I not just say that?
Trump called all those people
hostages and
patriots.
Yes, but now we have to...
Here's the thing. Yeah, you were going to go on the point. Sorry, go ahead.
My point is, when you have a mass prosecutorial event that is proven malicious, we just wipe it out. You have no choice. That's why I brought up Shays Rebellion. Owen Schroyer was permitted to be there. He in the InfoWars guys had a permit to be outside the Capitol doing a rally. He never entered the building. he was walking around with a bullhorn. When they convicted him and sentenced him to what he went to federal prison, I think, right, for 2 or 3 months. When he went to prison, when they were sentencing him, they explicitly stated that because in the interim after conviction he went on his show and spoke politically about his views and support for Trump, he deserved extra time in prison. So when something like that happens, and the prosecution has said, we will target you for your politics and we will punish you for supporting Trump, the only thing you can do is say, we are wiping the slate off. Now, with all that being said, these bad guys who hit cops and everything went to prison for 3 years.
I don't think it's enough.
And some got solitary confinement.
Well, change the law. And the biggest problem
it wouldn't matter if you changed the law because he would have pardoned them.
The biggest problem that I have with
he pardoned them because they changed the law just to convict them. What's this idiot not understanding?
Where people like you come with your arguments is that you focus on those and you don't focus on the innocent people who did.
No, I have.
Grandmother. No, you don't.
You're wrong. You're wrong. You don't listen to my show. I know Pam Hempel. I've interviewed her. I've interviewed.
You don't do it with this passion.
You're wrong.
You don't.
You're wrong.
I've watched enough of you that you don't do it.
You're wrong.
With passion.
What people have I interviewed on January 6th?
You don't go out and go, hey, you know what was wrong? The fact they didn't let them use their own evidence off their phone to sit there and prove themselves.
Exculpatory evidence was barred.
They wouldn't let them use evidence, man.
So
that's like the judicial wouldn't do that, and no one. So many people on the other side of the fence sat there and go, "I don't care. You're a problem because you're a Trump supporter." You got to understand
that's the problem. You got to understand Brian's a fascist, and he believes that in judicial proceedings,
definitely not.
The government should be allowed to bar individuals from bringing in exculpatory evidence.
Can I ask you, what did you say about? I'm definitely not a fascist. What did you say about Brian Sitnick? He did die the next day. You don't think it had anything to do with?
No. I said he died the next day.
Right. Did you feel like what happened that day might have played a role?
I don't know. He died of a stroke.
Yeah.
That's what I do know. Which
are you aware of what the coroner said?
The coroner said that January 6th did have something to do with it.
Correct.
But when you talk about strokes and you talk about plaque going into your brain, that doesn't happen in a day.
What about
that happens? Wait, that happens in a lifetime of.
But hold on.
Okay, well,
we can't just say, "Oh, it's
here's what I'm going to say."
They said natural causes.
Yeah. Okay, but here's what here's what he also said. He also the medical examiner noted, and you're correct, that the violence and what he endured that day, including getting assaulted with a chemical substance, played a role in his condition.
Yeah.
Now,
what about eating like crap? Does that play a role too?
So there.
Look, Ashley Babbitt got shot and killed, so it's like I don't think we don't play this.
But how many protesters died that day? How many protesters?
There was another. There was Ashley Babbitt. There was a woman, I believe, that had a heart attack and she was trampled that day.
Yeah, one guy fell off.
One guy was pushed.
It was a horrible. It was a horrible day.
But there's nobody on the other side going, wow, these people who didn't know what was going on, she shouldn't have been beaten to death. This one woman shouldn't have her brain scrambled and then get kicked out of her apartment because she can't work because she was in a tunnel.
It's all terrible.
Yes, terrible. Why? That's the part we're waiting for. Because all you guys want to do is sit there and go, you beat cops. What about everyone else who had their life ruined? What about the fact that I was on a list that I couldn't fly for 3 years and not charged with a damn crime? That's fascism, and no one ever talks about that. Why don't we ever talk about that? Why don't we ever care about that?
Here's what I'll say.
They beat the cops, and that's it. They beat the cops.
Here's what I'll say.
My whole career was ruined because I just was standing someplace, and they painted.
Your career is ruined?
No, was.
We got pardoned, right?
No, until I just leaned all hard in.
Okay,
right.
So here's what I'll say to that. Here's my number one concern. Okay, beyond somebody's career. I think about the families who have lost loved ones. I think about the officers who have traumatic brain injury.
Who has traumatic brain injury from January 6th? Nobody. Nobody.
I think about people who have, injuries that they have to suffer through for the rest of their lives.
A lot of them were J6ers. A lot of them were J6ers that were just standing there, bro.
Again,
how come you don't think about them? And this has proved my point because as you're bringing out who you think about,
you didn't hear what I just said. The problem is you don't listen.
Think about the 106 police officers that you're going to go down the list who had injuries, but you didn't open a word about the guy who was pushed off the stairs.
You're not listening to my words, so I'll repeat myself once again. The people who were injured, yes, there were officers that had traumatic brain injury, but anybody who was injured that day that didn't commit any crimes, I absolutely,
if there is, they had them before that day,
feel for.
So why? Let me ask you, why do you not see the government go after these people in a way that was not even, it wasn't even reasonable? And they ruined their lives, bro. And I don't hear a word. I don't hear a word from the other side about average people having the weight of the most powerful government. Who, and the other side on here is the fact that the lack of security. No one goes, how did these random people just get in here? As opposed to, it's supposed to be the most protected areas. Yet if you had your bodyguard, you said it was awesome. If he dropped the ball, you're not going to just be mad at the person that attacked you. You're going to be mad at this individual that you hired to do a certain job.
The president of the United States.
And no, that's not the job. Do you know the law? Who controls the security? Who controls the security?
The law, and I understand.
Who controls the security at that place?
I understand a couple things there. First of all, Donald Trump.
He's so desperate to get it back on Trump. It's Trump's fault that Nancy Pelosi didn't do her job. That's what he's arguing right now, that Trump could have just called in the military. Like, I think you would be criticizing him if he called in the military to stop a bunch of old ladies in the lobby of the fucking Congress. Like, he doesn't even see it because he just criticizes Trump for everything. And look, I'm against Trump on some of the Zionism bullshit he's into now, but I can't just let that corrupt everything I see about him like Brian does. Like, Trump could come out and give us all $2,000 again, and he would just say, well, yeah, it's going to make our taxes go up. He can't stand anything Trump does, and even if it's something that everybody unanimously loves, it's still bad because Trump did it. That's how bad this guy's TDS is. He's always desperate for a way to blame Trump for everything, and it just makes it harder for guys like me who are trying to criticize him for the right things.
Had the power, has the power to call in the National Guard. Did he not?
Who controls?
I'm asking you.
Did he not try to?
I'm asking
you. Did he not try to?
What did he do?
Did he not try to?
What did he do that day?
He asked them, do you guys want this?
The January 6th Commission
investigated
do you want this?
All right, guys.
He said he wanted. Who controls the security at the Capitol?
Donald Trump is the president of the United States.
Who controls?
Donald Trump had the power to call in the National Guard. He did not do that.
That's not the question I asked you.
It's been proven he did not do that. What you said is incorrect.
No, it's not. Can you please answer my question before we move on? Can you answer that question? Who's in charge of security for the?
Well, obviously you could point the finger as well at Nancy Pelosi.
Okay, thank you.
Donald,
but
Tim,
you're going to say
that proves it.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Tim.
Donald Trump called in the National Guard within the flip of a couple months back. Did he not?
I want to bring this into the modern era.
See? He's criticizing him for calling in the National Guard, and he would have criticized him if he called him in that day. Because anytime Trump does anything, he's wrong.
He didn't do that.
Because there's a couple of things that are going on since then, so we'll move forward. Yeah. But the last thing I'll just say on the issue, because you made a point, is I'll use one example. There's a woman who lives in Alaska. Mm-hmm. The feds raided her home because
a friend of mine.
She looked like somebody who was in the Capitol.
Right.
So they raided her home. I mean, this is pretty crazy. That's not evidence. That's shocking.
Yeah.
So I think the issue that Saika brings up, that I often bring up, is I sit down with somebody and they say someone punched a cop. I'm like, those people all deserve prison. Assaulted an officer, first offense.
They're not hostage and patriots. They don't deserve money.
Hold on. That's a different question. The people who are violent, the people who turn on barricades and smash windows, all deserve prison. But here's the issue. When I pointed out the majority of people who are actually charged, largely with misdemeanors, you have more than half of the people on the other side of the building where there's no riot. The rioters on one side of the building get in, and they go and open doors on the other side. Internally, the police themselves open doors.
Right.
Then there's a bunch of people walking around, and what do they see? The doors were opened, and this is a public building.
They all look at this as corruption on the public police. I look at this as corruption on the court system, right? You're talking about people who got their first offense. This is the first time they've ever been in trouble, and it's like January 6th, and they're getting arrested for, a misdemeanor, whatever, trespass, and they're getting 3 years in jail. That's like a crime on the court system, not really the police. The police had their own issues that day, but the court systems are the ones that really fucked everything up by getting political and trying to, punish everybody for something that they disagreed with, whenever they just let all the riots that went on for an entire summer go on. During COVID too, when you're not supposed to be outside, they let that go on, where cities burned to the ground and nothing. But if you were trespassing, you get 3 years off your life for your first offense. First offenses usually means probation and time served. That's always the case in every court I've ever been into. If it was your first offense, you're probably going to get some kind of probation or, suspended sentences, things like that. Maybe even a diversion program if they don't have enough evidence. That's the way that really normally goes. And they did it completely ass backwards for the January 6 people just to be political.
Video, you hear me go, is this where they're letting people in?
There were people.
Yep.
There were right. You have made statements that are incorrect. You've first of all, how many officers let people in, and how many officers were working that day?
But
the one that I saw, there was two cops right there, and then there was a line of cops.
Again,
there was a line of cops.
Doesn't matter. If it was just one group that was letting people in, and you're letting people in so people can come in. Like you can't let some people in and other people can't come in. No, if you're letting them in, then you let them in. That's you can't get them for trespass if you're letting them in. And in some cases, motioning for them to come this way. You can't get someone for trespass that you just did this hand gesture to. It's just not possible.
Just
Standing there,
respond
not
to what he
doing
just
anything.
said. So some
Not
of those
doing anything.
some of those
Chatting,
cops
kicking it.
some of those cops testified under oath. And some of those cops said, which I completely agree with, makes complete sense to me. If you have one cop per, say, 100 people, and you have an armed officer there, you basically have two choices. Choice number one, you take out your gun, you point it, and maybe start shooting at people, which I think everyone here would agree we didn't want them to do. Number two, you let them in. You have two choices in that situation. Why would you criticize?
You have three
tell me
choices.
what's the third choice.
Yeah,
You got
the
way
third
more than
choice
that.
is what they did to me. Hey, go back the other way. Okay, officer. Thank you.
You don't think they tried to do that?
They did it for me. I literally was.
Hold on.
I literally
The point I'm bringing up, once again, guys, stop. This is what I'm trying to get to. We have already concluded the portion of violent rioters are bad and deserve prison.
Brian just argued that the solution there is either do this or do that. And there's many more options than that. But Brian doesn't see things from a realistic lens. You can do a lot more than just motioning them in. Because once you motion them in, you can't get everybody you might be able to get the first guy, but the guys behind them, they don't know. They just see a cop doing this. How are you going to get someone for trespass with a cop motioning for everyone to come in? You can't.
Now, there's some contention there, but we largely agree, so we're moving past that. My question is, when the doors have been opened, and a fine gentleman over here is walking around with no idea what's going on public grounds, and they put him in prison, put him on a no-fly list. You didn't go to jail, did you?
No, I didn't go to jail. Well, only for one night, but they terrorized me.
But
for
again,
years.
right. So there are people who went to jail for a year or two, having been walking around doing nothing. This is prosecutorial overreach, and it's malicious.
I got a question about assault. Because if you spit on an officer, that's considered assault. But also if you grab him by the hair and pull him
Battery.
over.
No. Hold on. We got
A battery too.
So typically, and there are some jurisdictions where this is different. Assault is putting someone in reasonable fear of harm. Battery is taking an action, a physical contact that results in either harm or embarrassment.
So are there levels of assault where like a guy spit near a cop and then he got
embarrassment.
3 years in solitary and a guy like pushed a cop and got in?
Typically, assaulting an officer doesn't mean you're spitting near a cop. Assault an officer means usually attacking a police officer.
Okay.
So I disagree about the doors being open. And by the way, when you have one officer and hundreds of people there, an officer, if you told them, just tell people to go the other way, some of those, some of those officers would laugh at you. That wasn't working. When you have hundreds of angry people that are trying to storm the Capitol, it works with some people, sure.
It worked with our group.
Guess what? It worked with you.
Because they talked about it.
Hold on.
And you know what? The problem is
worked with you.
They shouldn't have came to my house with 15 agents and guns in my face.
That's a different.
No, but that's the
circumstance.
problem. That's the ultimate problem,
I'll
brother.
get to that in a moment.
That's the thing.
I'll get to that in a moment.
So when you're talking about, there were cops standing around. I was talking to them.
That's a
and they didn't
different-
say shit.
Hold on a second. Hold on.
He's already been swearing.
I didn't even.
That's what you're talking about. I'm happy to talk about that with you, but that's not what I'm referring to right now.
Right.
All I'm simply saying is maybe with somebody like you, when an officer says, you can't go in here, leave, maybe it would work with somebody like you. I guess it did. But there were people they were violent people, some of them. They weren't listening to Capitol Police. So I'm going back to what I said earlier. You have two choices. When you have people that appear to be a threat to you, that could hurt you, that appear to be violent people, you have two choices if you're an officer with a gun. You either take out your gun and start shooting them, or you let them in. By the way, if you're in a...
Not let them in. Motion for them to come in. You were guiding them in. So the people in the back that don't know what happened in the front, they have no idea. So most of the people in there are not criminals. They're just somebody who got motioned in by a cop.
Bank, okay? And there's a security guard at the safe. And he says, come right in. Does that give you the right to go in there and steal money from the safe? No, of course
Stealing
not.
is wrong.
Actually, hold on. That does create interesting legal problems.
Yes.
Maybe, perhaps, but that
security
doesn't mean
guard.
No, once someone from a security guard motions you to do something, you can't get in trouble. You're following the directions that a security guard just told you. Would it?
go in there and just steal all the money.
No.
from the bank?
Actually, depending on the circumstances, you may have a hard time prosecuting that case.
Right, because
an individual standing in a bank and the security guard says, "No, you're free to enter," and they go, "Oh, okay."
The security guard would be breaking the law.
So here's Here's I got something for you.
So
And,
stupid.
the first thing I'm going to tell you is I'm about to say something. You're going to give me an incorrect response. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to say is, get ready for it. January 6th is proven to have been an inside job.
Yep.
Confirmed.
Yep.
And I'm going to prove it to you. I can prove it to you. Now, give me your response first.
So,
and then I'm going to explain to you why it's true, actually.
So, claims that the FBI.
I didn't say that.
Orchestrated January 6th.
I never said that.
You never said that. Okay.
Nope, I said it was inside job.
Okay. By who?
By police.
Okay. So there was an investigation in 2021 of it allegedly being an inside job. That was debunked. The report came out in 2024. I know you didn't. There were no undercover agents that were there. There were 0 full-time undercover FBI employees that were present in the protest.
Okay, wait, no, stop.
Sorry.
I'm just going by the report that came out.
I need this response because this is important for everybody who's listening right now, so I can explain.
Now there were informants that were present.
So the reason why I asked this question in the way that I did, and the reason why I got to pause you, Saika, is you have changed the definition of inside job to fit this narrative.
Well, who was it? Tell me.
Okay, so hold on. The next thing I want to ask people is, what is your understanding of what an inside job is? Well, so let's start with a bank robbery. When there's a bank robbery and the police are investigating and they say this appears to be an inside job, does this mean that they were undercover federal agents? Does it mean that the head of the bank was in on it? Does it mean that the head of the bank brought in a bunch of like 7 or 8 security guards to orchestrate a big robbery? It does not. It could. But typically it refers to a single low-level employee who provided aid to the criminals in some capacity. So an inside job at a bank, almost 80% of the time, 90% of the time, they're not usually referring to the CEO of the bank setting up a robbery. They're referring to a janitor propping open a back door with a broom so that the bad guys can sneak in the back. An inside job just means someone working within this bank aided those criminals.
I understand what your definition is.
So there are a few things to consider. First, did you know that a man was acquitted specifically because the police fanned him into the building?
No, I'm unaware of.
There is a man who was acquitted. This is early on.
Black dude, right?
I think
he's the only one. He's a gay
he showed
black
video
actor from
where
New
the
York.
police officer waved him into the building and he points and he's like, and he walked in. They then criminally charged him and he says, this officer invited me into the building. That's an inside job. I'm not suggesting the FBI orchestrated January.
You think the FBI it was an inside job with the FBI?
No, I don't.
You don't. Okay.
Matthew Martin was that guy's name. Who
Right.
quit it.
And this was a big deal.
Yeah.
And this is when I brought up the point that, Cenk Uygur snapped on his show screaming and ranting about. I said, when a cop waves you to come on in, you can't trespass a person who was just asked to enter. Right. Now, there's more. Inside the building, whatever your argument is as to who is violent, or we know that there were a lot of violent people. We know that some people entered the other side of the building, and that's why they weren't charged with felonies. They were charged with misdemeanor trespass.
Right.
However, there is surveillance footage showing the shaman being walked with the police, and they opened the door. That is the definition of an inside job. Now, hold on. I've heard your argument about you have two choices, a gun, or you let him in. But the shaman was by himself, surrounded by 7 or 8 police officers who said, come with me, sir, right this way, and walked him into the Senate chambers.
Yeah, I saw that video.
That is an inside job.
I know. Okay, so let me...